Okay, so good afternoon and good evening, almost good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last LGMA daily briefings from COP26. My name is Yunus Arik and I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE Local Governments for Sustainability, and I'm the focal point of Local Government and Municipal Authorities constituency. Today is 12th of November, Friday. It is 20 to 5 p.m. The one of the longest informal stock taking plenary has just concluded, and we particularly wanted to have a different format for this daily briefing, because if you remember, we have this every day in the morning and we go through the agenda. Most of our delegation is gone, they're on the way back. And we would like to particularly focus on the latest progress in the negotiations. Just for you also to recall, yesterday was the Cities, Regions and Built Environment Day. There was numerous events by the presidency. Multi-level action pavilion was also full of events. We also had the Marrakesh Partnership special session. A group of delegation of mayors met with UN Secretary General. So definitely was a pretty busy agenda. Meanwhile, while all these activities were going on, there was a heavy mobilization, advocacy mobilization, because we wanted to influence the first draft text by the presidency. As you can remember, our concern was that there was no reference to local and regional governments or multi-level action. Our expectation was that Paris Agreement recognized local and regional governments or all levels of government. And in the Glasgow outcome, we were expecting a vision for embracing and multi-level collaboration, multi-level action, building on the logic that the national ambitions over the past 5 years have increased slightly in several countries, more than 60 of them, and they were all because of the dialogues and engagement with local and regional governments. And we want this to be the new normal in the second phase of Paris Agreement starting from COP26. However, the first draft did not give any vision for that. So we had mainly two tracks. One, we wanted to focus on the cover decision for that will be applicable for both Kyoto Protocol, UNFCCC, and Paris Agreement. And in that cover decision, we wanted to particularly aim for the preamble paragraph, because recognition of all levels were in the preamble paragraph of Paris Agreement. So we wanted to continuity of this. So we were proposing to integrate 2 words or 3 words: multi-level collaborative action. The remaining of the paragraphs, we also made similar attempts. And the second track was the Article 6.8 decision, which is non-market mechanism. We still wanted to push sustainable integrated urban and territorial development to be recognized as one of the work program areas of non-market mechanisms. So what happened is that when we received this morning the text, there was good news. There was good news in the sense that in the preamble paragraph, last paragraph was advanced, which included highlighting the urgent need for multi-level and cooperative action. So now this is in the preamble paragraph. So in that sense, we achieved our first goal. This was plus. There is another paragraph, 89, where it says encouraging youth in decision-making at the national, global, and local level, which is also positive progress, that because it recognized local decision-making processes. Paragraph 91, I'm talking about the Paris Agreement cover decision. Paragraph 91 recognizes for the first time in a COP decision the role of the 9 constituencies. That's also important because there were not a legal basis over the past 30 years. The constituency process was just like an ad hoc de facto process. There was no legal process. I think this was very helpful because this gives us now more legitimacy. You may recall 2 days before the constituency focal points, they were very much advancing dialogues with the presidency and the parties, but there was a special meeting. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and UN Secretary General met for the first time in a COP atmosphere with the 9 focal points. So I think this was a result of all our efforts that now this process is now recognized as an important, let's say, mechanism of stakeholder engagement in the UNFCCC process. These are the positive news. we have seen the Article 6.8. We still have some references to local context, which is good, local and subnational context. But there was one paragraph which was opening doors for accessing local activities for climate finance. This paragraph is removed, so that's something that we lost. But at least this is a progress on the right direction, I think. What will happen from now on is that this was a 3 hours plenary. Or let's say it's 40 countries, they have expressed their views on this text by the presidency. Before this stock taking, there were 3 ministerials. This was closed. So all the ministers have made their internal discussions. While ministers were talking in the meeting rooms, there was a very special moment. It was 2 hours of people's plenary at the plenary room, and the statements were freely expressed by a lot of delegations, and then they all walked out symbolically. I mean, they will still be involved in the process, but I think it was several thousands almost, or at least hundreds of people, a long queue, and our colleague Andrew was also joining them, so he will refer to that. By the way, I forgot to introduce my guest. We have Ladislas Nkamena from Rwanda Association of Local Governments. We will hear from him in a moment about his vision or his perspectives about how negotiations have evolved, because he will also deliver our closing statement. And as from a Rwanda representative, he will be also talking about our preparations for the Africa COP, which is announced now. Egypt will be hosting it. And I would also like to hear from Andrew Potts, Secretary General of Climate Heritage Network, who has been running a marvelous 2 years campaign to integrate culture into the climate context, and local governments have been very, very actively involved, and we have really changed the architecture of this discussion, that culture is now an important element of especially a new era of 1.5 degree living. So this was my introduction. As I said, what will happen is that over the next couple of hours, the presidency said that they will revise their text. They will continue to keep it as a presidency proposal. They will convene an informal stock-taking plenary, and afterwards, very likely, their text will be put into an official UNFCCC letterhead paper, and they will very likely say that, would you like to adopt it or not? I personally believe this will take a couple of hours, more than a couple of hours, knowing how things are evolving. It could go towards the midnight, even tomorrow morning, but it can also be very speedy adopted. The reason why I'm a bit positive on that is there were 2 very important countries in the stock-taking plenary. They made their statements, and Ladislas, you can also share your views on that. Saudi Arabia said that they can live with this document. Everybody was afraid of this statement because for the first time in the UNFCCC decision, there is a reference to coal and fossil fuels. In the informal discussion, Saudi Arabia delegation, that this is a red list for them. They said that climate negotiations is something for emissions, not for resources. And they said that they would like to delete anything on coal and fossil fuels. But in the plenary, Saudi Arabia said that the current text, which still refers to coal and fossil fuel, but a bit less, let's say, ambitious, they said that they can live with this text. So I hope that they will play with their negotiation cards, but they would still let this references in, which will be making Glasgow outcome one of the remarkable moments. And China also did not express any major rejections. We heard a number of dissatisfaction from small island states, but I believe they will find a way on forward. So a deal can be coming either tonight or by the latest tomorrow. Here's what we are, or Friday night, that's the situation where we are. So Ladislas, let's hear from you. You have been following the negotiations as part of the Rwanda delegation, but you're representing your Association of Local Governments. So let's hear from your perspectives.
Thank you, Mr. Yunus, for inviting me on this panel to share the experience from the negotiations, but also from Africa perspective, because we are here as an Africa delegation. You have a group of Africa and China, and we are making a block for the negotiations. Well, I have been in the informal stock taking session. We heard from different countries speaking. There is a kind of consensus looking at the approach. There are two aspects where a consensus is emerging about mitigation and about adaptation. I think there is a kind of consensus. Where there is a diverging approach, it is about financing the mitigation and adaptation. This aspect of climate finance has emerged as a point of disagreement. We had big powers, the United States, Europe, and Canada. They made a kind of block to oppose the submissions from, and this is the least developed countries, including African countries and China. And this became even open and clear during the session with the presidency. What they are saying is that it is good to have 1.5. That is not an option. They all agree that this is an existential problem. Adaptation, that is fine, but what they are saying and what we are saying is that we are likely to leave Glasgow without a financing mechanism. African countries had made a submission to establish what they called Glasgow Climate Finance Facility, which was opposed by these countries. And this made a very big problem during the negotiations. Also, as we heard from the feedback from the countries that submitted during the plenary, there are some countries during the negotiations which expressed some of the concerns, but which somehow lowered the tone during the plenary. That is the case of Saudi Arabia, but also some countries from Latin America. But looking, for example, at the Argentina, they clearly say that we are likely to fail the climate if we leave Glasgow without a consensus on financing. And this is also what Africa is saying, because these developed countries, they are the major contributors in emissions. They say we are likely to cut the emissions, but they ask African countries to finance and to ensure that this is achieved. But African countries are saying, it's okay, climate change is a shared responsibility, it is a shared destiny, but finance has also to be equally shared. We don't want this in the form of loan, it has to be a responsibility in financing. A concern, as me, I'm coming from the Rwanda Association of Local Government Authorities, looking at all the submissions, almost none of them cares about the fate of local government, the local government and the municipal authorities. Looking at all the submissions, I think only one referred to that paragraph that has been removed, but they are all concerned about country or national financing mechanisms. But when it goes to local government, at the grassroots, we are there, we are victims, we are at the receiving end of the emissions, we are at the receiving end of we become the real victims on the ground. But when it goes to climate finance, local government are left out at this Glasgow COP. And would wish, probably, as the presidency said, that they will be looking again into this text so that they can have a final version which can be shared tonight. Let's hope that the local government and the municipal authorities shall be considered as well.
Personally speaking, I don't think there will be too much things to come out of this COP for local governments. But I would like to also ask your point about your loss and damage, because there's also big frustration that there is no major thing. There's a body being proposed for 2 years or so. What is your reading of the loss and damage?
When it goes to loss and damage, as you said first, local government and the municipal authorities are likely to be left out by this COP. That is a big risk, but what is not bad with this COP? At least in the preamble, you remember yesterday, but when you had the closed meeting with the presidency, we highlighted this need to have the aspect of multi-level collaboration in the preamble. At least that is achieved. That is yes, that is the window where local government can push within their constituencies because they have now an entry point. But for the loss and damage, I don't see anything coming out clearly. To be honest, the loss and the damage at this COP, they have focused on adaptation and the mitigation, but the loss and the damage, I think particularly the least developed countries, whereby most African countries are falling, and this is a real problem we can see. But now COP27 shall be in Africa.
Okay, before going to COP26, let's hear from Andrew, because Andrew, were you in the plenary for the whole People's Plenary? Did you follow all of it?
Only part.
Only part, because there was a huge also reaction. The civil society was particularly more reactive to loss and damage into the process, and they were really strong in their statements. And then they walked out. Maybe let's focus on a bit from Andrew, your perspective, and focus on culture, and then come back to what we can expect from Africa COP. Is that okay, Ladislas?
Okay, well, thank you, Yunus. My name is Andrew Potts, and I'm from the Climate Heritage Network. It's an international network of organizations focused on the cultural dimensions of the climate emergency and on mobilizing arts, culture, and heritage for climate action. Thank you, Yunus, for having me here, and thank you for our partnership with the LGMA and ICLEI, not just at this COP, but since our founding. Why are cultural voices here at this COP? Well, let me put it to you this way. We know that we are dangerously off course to meeting the Paris Agreement targets, but yet we've been trying to bend the curve for 30 years. It's 6 years since the Paris Agreement. What haven't we tried? What's been missing so far from the efforts? There tends to be a focus on climate action as either new technology or personal responsibility. If they invent some whiz-bang gizmo, that'll help. And if I make changes in my personal life, that will help. But there's something in between those two things. There's the cultural, the communal, the social dimension of life. Culture informs people's consumption and production patterns. Culture speaks to the acceptability of systems change and perceptions of risk. Heritage reminds us of the way society has dealt with past emergencies. Creativity and artists can help us imagine a post-carbon lifestyle. So for all these reasons, we're here bringing these messages from cultural actors to the COP, but then also we're worried about the impacts. We know that at 1.5 degrees of warming, the impacts on cultural resources, on coastal heritage, on archaeology, on people's traditions and customs are extreme, but at 2 degrees, they are catastrophic. Cultural extinction is not a climate action option. And so when you saw civil society walking out today, worried that the dream of keeping 1.5 alive is slipping away, that's very much on the minds of cultural actors. And so last thing to say, why am I here in the multi-level action pavilion? First, cities and regional governments have been real drivers of the creation of the Climate Heritage Network. So these are the arts councils and arts agencies of local governments. They're the monuments authorities of regional government. They are local and regional library authorities. I mean, these are many of our core actors mobilizing arts, culture, and heritage for climate action. And the second thing is that we are one of those sets of voices, one of those sets of actors who are really excluded, marginalized from the current system. We don't have a Ringo or a Bingo that's focused on artists and librarians. There's no Marrakesh pathway for culture. And so this message of multi-level action really resonates with a constituency like ours, because that is an entry point for us to bring cultural voices into the UNFCCC, into the international climate conversation. And so that's why we're here and happy to be with you today.
Maybe just also recall to our audience, because this dialogue is now recorded, it is not live, but it will be installed in our virtual platform. So then if those who are subscribed will receive their daily bulletin today, and they will click on it. But if you want to listen more about culture, heritage, and local governments, we had a session with Climate Heritage Network and United Cities and Local Governments on 5th of November, Friday morning, where we have welcomed another inspirational speech from Mayor of Izmir, ICLEI's Climate Action Co-Champion. So you can visit this session. It was really inspirational. And I mean, we are saying, as you have mentioned, even in this text, culture is still not visible. But it's not over. I mean, there is still a way to go forward, because this will not be the last COP, very likely, because we will not solve the climate problems. One important thing that will come, and you are coordinating this very successfully, an IPCC co-sponsored culture committee meeting is taking place in the next couple of weeks. Maybe very briefly, if we can make use of that event, maybe on the way to COP26, 27, this could be an option. Maybe briefly refer to it if you like, and then we can give the floor to Ladislas, because then it will also be throwing the ball on his side, because then he can take it in the preparations for the COP27 from our side.
Yes, thank you, Yunus. I mean, we still lack, even after COP26, the meaningful incorporation of the cultural dimensions of the climate emergency and climate action into policy frameworks here. But there have been some breakthrough moments. One is the incorporation of culture into the new Race to Resilience campaign. The Race to Resilience has an express culture dimension, and so that's an important development. And then to the meeting that Yunus was referring to, there will be in just a few weeks, and it's hard to me to believe there's another huge meeting in my life coming up, but the first week of December, there will be the International Co-Sponsored Meeting on Culture, Heritage, and Climate Change. It's under the framework of the IPCC. It's a jointly sponsored by the IPCC, ICOMOS, and UNESCO. And this meeting will look at how cultural information, diverse knowledge systems are and are not taken on board in IPCC processes, and hopefully lead to better recognition of those sources of information in climate science in general, and specifically to recognizing the role of culture in the forthcoming IPCC special report on cities, where, to be honest, the topic is still not well developed, in my opinion.
And in fact, you have a huge advantage, because the co-chair of this process is Deborah Roberts, who is our long-lasting champion of the local governments from Durban, a Tekwini municipality. She has been very influencing in the adaptation process, and she's now the IPCC Working Group 2 co-chair. And she's also the co-chair of this symposium. When you have Deborah on board, don't worry. Exactly. So we are in safe hands, and I'm sure we will have good products. So Radistas, now officially today announced that Egypt, and I've even heard that it will be Sharm el-Sheikh, will host exactly the same date, 7 to 18 November next year. Egypt is, of course, important because they also hosted the world, the COP on biodiversity 2 years ago, 2019, and they were the host of the World Cities Day this year. On the day when we were opening the COP here, World Cities Day were celebrated in Luxor in Egypt. So they have a very good, like say, connection to cities, which gives hope that if this multi-level is kept into the preamble, this could be opening doors for us, and it will be the African COP that could be the breakthrough for us. So how do you think, what's your expectations?
Thank you, Yunus. I think let me thank you personally as the Director of Global Advocacy for ICLEI, but also as the focal point for the LGMA constituency to NFCCC. You allowed us really to follow the preparations and the proceedings of this COP, and thanks to you and to your organization, the entire local government family globally was capable to follow the preparations and to attend in a big numbers you have seen, because information is power. So thank you very much for this. And also, thank you for having me on this panel again as a representative from my country, but also from Rwanda and Africa as the host for next COP. Back 2016, there was COP22. It was held in Marrakech. And now we shall be having again COP27 in Egypt. That is, or in the northern part of Africa. We are happy for this. Our expectations for the COP27, one, we need to look at the perspective of Africa as a continent. Africa is a young continent with population, a very young population, but also is growing cities, growing urbanization. I think these two aspects, the demographic dividend and the aspect of global urbanization, should define the next scope of COP. That is what I see. Second, 1 year ago, Egypt was also chairing the African Union. And 5 years ago, African Union has adopted the African Charter on Decentralization and Good Governance. I think this COP in Africa shall have these three aspects. One, we have this aspect of the demographic dividend, the youth and the women. We have also this aspect of urbanization. The cities are at the center of urbanization, of course. But also now what we are failing to have here at Glasgow, the multi-level collaboration being at the center, as Africa has adopted the Charter on Decentralization and Governance. I'm hopeful that the African COP shall now put this at the center. But my colleague from the cultural heritage is lucky because Egypt is the capital of African culture. So he shall be very lucky on this. And I think this is an entry point to advocate that culture could be embedded in COP proceedings, because Egypt also has this aspect of cultural heritage, and it is really one of the income or the economies of Egypt is built also around the culture. Looking at the cities, for COP27, I'm very hopeful. But the challenge is that people who shall be in Egypt next year, 2022, are almost the same people who are here in Glasgow. And what we are having today is that these countries which are instrumental in emissions and the loss and the damage are not willing to commit financially. So probably now Egypt, now as the host, should define what Africa wants from COP, and hopefully we shall get it from there, because always the presidency has a say in the proceedings. I'm hopeful in the future as a local government from Rwanda and from Africa. I hope in Rwanda we are lucky. We have the clear framework for collaboration between local government and the central government. We have the decentralization policy. The local government law, which was passed last month, provided for Prime Minister's instructions defining the sectoral decentralization. That is how central government and the local government can collaborate in terms of policy formulation and implementation, but also access to finances. In Rwanda, we have those frameworks. But in most countries, when we discuss as local government are simply as agent for implementation without means to implement. And that is the challenge we are having from Glasgow here. We are going back probably without a commitment on how local government can get access to climate finance. And we shall keep advocating for this. But thank you very much for having allowed this platform. At least we are sure and we are hopeful. What we did not get financially, we got it at least in terms of information, and we shall keep moving. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your kind words and hope. I'm very happy that you're still hopeful, and this is exactly what we should never give up. And that's what Mayor Arve said yesterday. Today, we will not give up. Whatever comes from COP26, we will not give up. We didn't give up in '92 when the Agenda 21 was adopted but not implemented. The cities rolled it out, and we reached to SDGs. We did not give in 2009 when Copenhagen failed. We said that multilateralism should continue. and we reach to Paris. So we will, from Glasgow, we will not give up and will continue. We have advantages. UN Habitat is based in Kenya, Africa. Maimuna Sharif yesterday said that, yes, we will have this time the first urbanization and climate ministerial. We will make sure this will happen. I'm sure you had the culture ministerial here, but probably it was a small scale. It is a good recommendation that we should also aim for a bigger culture and climate ministerial in Egypt, probably. So let's bring all our assets so that it becomes really a game changer for all of our constituencies and topics. I think we have covered this session more or less today. We will not have a briefing tomorrow because most of ICLE team will be on the way back, hopefully home. Our wrap-up mailing will come on Monday if all goes okay. But stay tuned on social media and we will try to share updates. Closing intervention from LGMA will be delivered by Ladislas. We are very lucky. The opening was delivered by the mayor of Tegucigalpa, so Latin America COP. High-level segment was Greater Manchester Mayor and the Burnham, UK. And closing is an African local government representative. So I think we also make the good bridging among our constituencies. So what I could say, I think for us, this 2 weeks was particularly very enriching. We delivered our homework for sure. And we will wait for them to deliver their homework. But even if they make an F in there or G in there or C, we will not punish them. We will tell them that, okay, you have one more option. Come to Egypt so that you can get an A. With this, I'd like to announce that our session is closed. And for all those who are here, wish you the best on long hours. Those who are traveling, have safe way back. Those who are watching online, don't forget to come back and you can watch other sessions as well. Thanks a lot for your engagements and goodbye from Glasgow. Well, that was a good closer.